I solved Naval's wealth problem. Naval Ravikant created the most elegant wealth framework of the internet age. Get rich without getting lucky. Build leverage. Create specific knowledge. Own equity, not time. And he accidentally created a generation of people trying to skip the building phase entirely. By the end of this video, you understand why Naval's wisdom is correct but abstract, why his audience treat tweets as shortcuts instead of starting conditions, and why trying to jump straight to philosophical retirement prevents people from building the leverage they need. This isn't about Naval specifically, he's just the most visible example of someone whose frameworks are so compressed that people miss the decades of work that made them valid. And that gap between wisdom and application is structural. Here's what Naval's advice looks like. Build specific knowledge. Get leverage through code, media, or people. Play long-term games with long-term people. Read what you love until you love to read. Every piece of advice is correct, profound even, but it's compressed. The wisdom exists at such a high level of abstraction that it requires interpretation to become actionable, and his audience interprets it wrong. They read build specific knowledge and think, I need to figure out what my specific knowledge is. Then they spend months trying to identify their specific knowledge instead of just building things and discovering it through doing. They read get leverage through code or media and think, I should learn to code or start a podcast. Then they learn coding tutorials or launch podcasts without having anything specific to build or say. They read play long-term games and think, I should only work on things that take decades to pay off. Then they reject short-term opportunities that would actually teach them how to build leverage. The advice is correct, but it's wisdom for people who already understand the underlying mechanics through experience. Naval's audience is trying to implement wisdom before they have the foundation that makes the wisdom applicable. Here's what people miss about Naval's framework. It worked for Naval because of where he started and when he started. He didn't read his own tweets and became successful. He became successful through years of startup grinding, multiple failed companies, learning to code and build products, building relationships in Silicon Valley, making angel investments, refining his thinking through actual market feedback. Then, after 2 decades of that, he compressed what he learned into a tweet-length wisdom. His audience sees the compressed output. They don't see the 20 years of input that actually created it. So they try to implement get rich without getting lucky as if it's a strategy they can execute today. But Naval's framework isn't a strategy. It's a retrospective pattern recognition of what worked for him across years of building. It's descriptive, not prescriptive, but his audience reads it as prescriptive. Naval says to build specific knowledge, so I should figure out my specific knowledge. No, you build things until patterns emerge. Then you notice what your specific knowledge is. You can't figure it out in advance through introspection. Here's the most common failure pattern. Naval's advice is build leverage. His audience hears skip the time for money phase and just straight into leverage. So they try to start a business without having built anything first. Create content without having deployed a perspective through doing. Raise capital without having proven they can execute. Build an audience without having expertise to share. They're trying to acquire leverage before building the capability that makes leverage valuable. Leverage amplifies what you already have. If you have zero capability, leverage amplifies zero. Code leverage works if you could build valuable software. If you can't code well, having code leverage just means you build worthless software faster. Media leverage works if you have insights worth spreading. If you don't, having an audience just means more people see that you have nothing to say. Capital leverage works if you can deploy it effectively. If you can't, having money just means you lose it faster. Naval's advice wants the leverage without the capability building phase, because Naval's framework makes it sound like you can just shortcut there. You can't. Naval didn't, but his compressed advice makes it seem like he did. Here's another pattern. Naval talks about peace, contentment, meditation, reading, thinking. His audience interprets this as the goal is to reach a state where you don't have to work anymore. So they optimize for passive income, so they could stop working, financial independence, so they can retire early, minimalist lifestyle, so they need less money, all while they're 25 years old and haven't built anything yet. They're trying to get the end state without going through the building phase. Naval can talk about peace and meditation and reading because he already built multiple successful companies, has significant wealth, and has nothing left to prove. His audience is trying to adopt the mindset of someone who's already won while they're still at the starting line. That doesn't work because the piece Naval talks about having gone through struggle and come out on the other side. You can't meditate your way to wealth. You can't read philosophy and skip the building phase. You can't be content with nothing when you haven't created value yet. Naval's philosophical content is descriptive of where he is now. It's not prescriptive for where you should be at the beginning. Here's what's actually happening. Naval created maximally compressed wisdom. It's elegant, it's profound, it's correct, but compression requires decompression to be useful. And his audience doesn't have the context to properly decompress it. They're reading, build specific knowledge, use leverage, play long-term games, and hearing. There's a shortcut to wealth that doesn't require grinding, and Naval has the map. There's no shortcut. Naval's advice is to build correctly, not how to skip building, but the compression makes it seem simple. And simple seeming advice gets interpreted as easy. It's not easy. Naval spent decades building. His wisdom is the distilled output of that process. His audience wants to input the wisdom and output the success without going through the process. That's not how it works. But Twitter length wisdom can't contain that caveat. So people read the tweets, feel enlightened, and then wonder why implementing Naval's advice doesn't make them feel wealthy. It's because they're trying to implement conclusions without going through the experiments that validated those conclusions. So, what's the issue? Naval's framework is genuinely valuable. It's one of the best compressed business wisdom advice available. But it's wisdom for people who are already building and need better mental models to guide their building. It's not a strategy for people who haven't started building yet. If you're already creating things, already experimenting, already getting market feedback, Naval's frameworks help you interpret what's working and what's not. If you're not building anything yet, Naval's frameworks just become another form of intellectual entertainment that makes you feel like you're making progress while you're actually still stuck in analyst mode. You can keep reading Naval's tweets and waiting to discover your specific knowledge through introspection. Or you can acknowledge that specific knowledge emerges from building things, getting feedback, iterating, and noticing what you're unusually good at after years of doing. Most people will keep reading the wisdom because reading wisdom feels productive and doesn't require the discomfort of actually building things that might fail. But at least you know now why you could recite Naval's entire philosophy and still haven't built anything. It's not that the philosophy is wrong, it's that you're treating compressed retrospective wisdom as a prospective strategy. Naval built first, then understood what he built. You're trying to understand first, then build. That the order matters, and you can't reverse it without enough reading.